Welcome. I'm Madeline DiNono, President and CEO of the Institute. Joining me today is our esteemed ASL interpreters, Sharon Pierre-Louis and Vanessa Klein. We want to send our prayers to all of the people and communities in India who are fighting against COVID-19. Our prayers are with you. Advertising is a very important storytelling platform that can greatly influence how we perceive women and girls and how they see their value in society. Woven throughout our daily lives, media messages permeate into our consciousness at every turn, and the influence of advertising on children is profound. Thus, it is important for us to remember the kinds of advertising likely to be seen by children and how it is influencing them, which is the topic of our Global See Jane Salon today. We are so honored to be partnered with UNICEF India to bring you this groundbreaking study. And now I'd like to introduce a special video message from UNICEF Executive Director, Henrietta Fore.
When it comes to ending harmful stereotypes and reaching gender equality, we need all hands on deck. That includes companies through their advertising, media, marketing, and products. We need to show children and adolescents what is possible in their lives, that there is no limit to what they can do or who they can be, no matter their gender, the color of their skin, or their ethnicity. That is why UNICEF is working with a number of private sector partners to develop products and messaging that represents and celebrates diversity in all its forms, and why we are partnering with the Gina Davis Institute to gather evidence on current gender and diversity trends in advertising. As the findings in India have shown, we still have work to do. Our progress is too slow. Guided by this evidence, let's join forces with advertising and marketing companies, with forward-looking private sector partners, and with allies in the Unstereotype Alliance and UN Women to develop new solutions that can end harmful stereotypes. Let's show girls and boys everywhere that they can be who they want to be, that their dreams are achievable.
Thank you so much, Henrietta. And now I would love to welcome our founder and chair of the Institute, Gina Davis.
Hello, thank you, Madeline. And thank you, Henrietta, for those profound and timely words. Greetings to all of you joining us from around the globe today. I'm so honored to have this exciting collaboration with UNICEF India and the IAA. The groundbreaking research we're presenting today would not have happened without your dedication and support, so thank you. In just a few minutes, Dr. McTaggart will be presenting the findings from our new global research. Media is one of the most important factors influencing how we see ourselves and how we value each other. While we find an appropriate presence of women and girls in the most viewed Indian ads, with more speaking time and equal screen time, they are still marginalized by colorism, hypersexualization. They're lacking in careers, aspirations, and activities outside of the home. This stark inequality that has been revealed in the portrayal of women and girls in advertisements needs to be addressed. The media landscape can be reimagined to empower women and girls. I'm hopeful that this study, in partnership with UNICEF and the IAA, set the framework for improvement in ads in India and across the globe. Now I will turn it back over to Madeline.
Thank you so much, Gina. And now, without further ado, I would love to introduce Dr. Ninoshka McTaggart, PhD, who is our Associate Vice President of Research and Insights at the Institute. Nosh, take it away.
Hello, I am excited this morning to be presenting our research on gender bias and inclusion in advertising in India. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about the Institute. Currently, we're focusing on the representation of 6 identities, which include gender, race, LGBTQ+, disability, age, and body size. So we're looking at these identities and also the intersectionality of these identities. We have partnered up with UNICEF to conduct the first public study to systematically analyze gender representations in ads in India. This purpose of this study is to look at advertising media and how it reinforces or challenges harmful gender roles that shape the lives of girls and women in India. So I wanted to get a little bit into the methodology. So we used human expert coding and also automated coding through the GDIQ. For the expert human coding, we analyzed over 3,400 visually prominent speaking and non-speaking characters in the 1,000 most viewed ads in India across 19 market segments. And for the GDIQ piece of this research, we used an analysis of automated analysis of screen time and speaking time. So first, I want to jump into the quantity of representation, and then later in the presentation, I will talk about the quality of representation. So good news is that female and male characters are just as likely to pair in ads. So we see gender parity here, which is promising. As far as screen and speaking time, we see that female characters dominate screen and speaking time. So also a positive data point here. We see that women have about 59.7% of the screen time and about 56% of speaking time. When we look at that through a global lens, we see that female characters dominate screen and speaking time. So if we're looking at the figures for India, we see again about 60% of the screen time compared to a global rate of 44%. And for speaking time, 56.3% versus a global average of 39%. So we also put the ads to the CJane test, and the CJane test must have at least one prominent character. And what we mean by that is it could be a supporting character, a leading character, a co-leading character who is a woman and is not depicted with gender stereotypes and tropes. So about 78% of the ads pass this test. We also looked at market sectors. So female characters are overrepresented in personal care, fashion and accessories, and corporate, and they're underrepresented in banking and finance, home decor and infrastructure, media and entertainment, travel and tourism, and sports. So we're seeing here that there is kind of gender stereotyping going on, where women are overrepresented in traditionally female roles. So we also did some analysis on age. So female characters are more likely to be in their 20s, while we look at male characters that are more likely to be either children or over the age of 50. For boys, we see that there's 20.5% of characters are ages 1 through 12 versus 13% of girls. And then for ages 20 through 29, we see women are about 38% of the characters versus 26.7% men. Women, 5% of those characters over 50 years, and 9.7% of men are 50 plus. So we also looked at socioeconomic status. We saw that characters of lower income are underrepresented. So you see the stark difference here. There's about 51% of characters come from the middle class, while only 6.4% come from lower class. So we see that ads tend to favor portraying characters from middle class backgrounds. As far as skin tone goes, we see that characters with dark skin tones are underrepresented. So we see, again, a stark contrast here. About 60% of those characters featured have light skin tone versus 4% of characters with dark skin tones. So there is an element of colorism going on here. So to further emphasize this point, we looked at skin tone and income class. So we saw that those from the upper class predominantly had light skin tones, and those from the lower class, a majority of those characters had dark skin tones. So again, colorism seems to be a trend in these ads. Next, I wanted to move to gender and skin tone. So female characters are actually more likely to have light to medium light skin, while male characters are more likely to have dark skin. So you can see the numbers here, about 67% of female characters versus 52% of male characters with light to medium light skin, and male characters at 6.5% versus female characters at 1.3% for darker skin tones. We also did an analysis on gender and body size. So female characters are actually 4 times more likely to have a small body type. And you can see the numbers here are quite striking. So it's the idea that women are usually portrayed as a smaller body type, again, reinforcing the gender norm that women should be, have a certain look, right? A skinnier body type. So now I'm going to move more to the quality of representation now that we've reviewed some of the quantity of representation that we found. So with appearance and gender, female characters are more likely to be stunning / very attractive or better than average looking, and much more likely than men here. So we see 5.9% of female characters are stunning versus less than 1% for male characters. And then better than average looking, we see 33.6% of female characters are better than average looking versus male characters that come in around 17%. As far as appearance and income class go, we also see that upper class female characters are more likely to be stunning or better than average looking. So if you look at the numbers here, we have about 63% for upper class female characters, 38% for middle class characters, and just below 7% for lower class female characters. Female characters with light skin tones are more likely to be stunning / better than average looking. So again, this is the idea that colorism is at play here, and that female characters with lighter skin tones tend to be considered more attractive and preferred. As far as sexualization goes, we see female characters are about 6 times more likely to be in revealing clothing, 5 times more likely to be sexually objectified, and 4 times more likely to be partially nude. Again, so we are seeing a reinforcement of gender stereotyping as female characters are seem to be represented for their beauty or their appearance or their body types. So we also look at gender tropes in our research, and we see that actually male and female characters are equally likely to be reduced to a gender trope. Thankfully, we didn't find too many tropes in this data set, but the most common ones that popped up were the subservient wife, the pushy aunt, the domineering / controlling male, and also a man who does not involve himself in domestic duties. As far as occupations go, we see that male characters are more likely than female characters to be shown working or in an occupation, again, reinforcing that women are usually represented doing tasks in the household. We see that male characters are also shown as more likely to be leaders. So it's for male characters about 26% versus female characters that come in around 19%. As far as decision making goes, female characters are more likely to make decisions about their household versus male characters who are more likely to make decisions about their future. When we look at caretaking and parenting, we see that female characters are 3 times more likely to be a caretaker and a parent as well. So you see these numbers are pretty similar for both caretakers and parents. Also, another interesting point is mothers are 3 times more likely to be shown as excellent parents than fathers. So when we look at female-dominated activities, female characters are more likely to be shown shopping, cleaning, and preparing meals. So the idea that that female characters are tied to the home, they're tied to domestic duties. And also we see this trend with female-dominated settings. So we see that female characters are more likely to be featured in living rooms and bedrooms as well in these ads. As far as male-dominated settings, we see that male characters are more likely to be shown in an office, outdoors, or at a sporting event. Again, stereotypical places where we usually see males. And then quickly, since I've presented all this data, I want to just suggest some ways that we can set this data forth into action. So we have some interventions that we thought would be useful for the advertising governing bodies. First, we should establish gender guidelines. So looking at quantity and quality of representation for girls and women. Also looking at colorism and skin color guidelines, and representing those with darker skin tones more often. It would be useful to establish a caste and class guideline as well for the quality of representation for people from lower classes and castes. Also, we should provide financial incentives to advertisers to meet and achieve gender, skin tone, and caste class benchmarks. And finally, for content creators, we also have some suggestions. We want to see more ads with girls ages 1 through 12. We want to see girls and women's at equitable rates to boys and men in advertising. We want more characters that are 50 plus. That's also really important. We want to also cast characters across the skin tone spectrum, but this is especially true for female characters. Also, body size for especially female characters are important to have more diversity there. And also just showing female characters in public roles and more male characters in domestic activities, as well as showing female characters in public spaces and male characters in the household. So those are some suggestions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. McTaggart. There's a lot to unpack here. Just for everyone who is watching, I wanted to let you know that the full report will be on our website. So you can download an executive summary and the entire report. And now I would love to welcome Dr. Yasmin Ali Haq, who is the UNICEF Rep for India, to give us some remarks.
So good morning, good evening. I am delighted to be here amongst so many champions for gender equality. And I really want to congratulate the Gina Davis Institute for being part of this very meaningful study. It is wonderful too that we have the India chapter of the International Advertising Association and a key strategic partner as we take the important step of acting on the findings. This is going to be an important journey. We all know that gender stereotypes form early in life, and it is the childhood experience that significantly impacts attitudes, practices, and behaviors of men and women as adults. Children observe and learn the social and gender cues from their parents, family, teachers, and all the adults in their lives. Then they subconsciously internalize them and make themselves more vulnerable in many ways, either by really adopting some of the very harmful gender stereotypes. In society, advertising and marketing plays a powerful role in the process of gender socialization as they continue to influence children and adolescents. There, of course, is immense potential to promote women's and girls' empowerment, but it also, on the other hand, can harbor harmful stereotypes, reinforce traditional gender roles, and promote gender discrimination in home and outside. The conventional gender norms constantly devalue women and girls, making it difficult to secure their rights and enabling them to really reach their full potential. In India, we face declining sex ratio, girls dropping out of schools, marrying before 18 years of age, and not being supported to work outside the home. There is a significant gap in the investments in a girl's future pathways beyond her getting married. Media can definitely help shift the narrative and provide diverse and powerful role models to fuel girls' aspirations and simultaneously shift the perceptions of people around her. At UNICEF India, equity and gender equality is core to our country program. And as we strengthen our focus, advocacy, and engagement around an important issue, that of equal value of girls and boys, this study is really important. In our quest to challenge gender biases and promote equality, it is important that we better understand how advertising and marketing likely influences children and adolescents, boys and girls. The study with the Gina Davis Institute on Gender in Media to measure the level and type of gender stereotyping found in Indian advertisements is really a welcome step in understanding how media at times reinforces the harmful side of it. The research shares some nuances on the kind of gender stereotyping that we find, and we've heard some very obvious ones coming out of what we just heard from the presenter of the study. And it's really important that this then creates a baseline to measure change and also initiate dialogue with advertising professionals and, importantly, the content creators. We at UNICEF are really looking forward to our journey with IAA, especially as they remain committed to translating the recommendations into action by engaging leading business representatives. We hope IAA will also work with industry members to launch campaigns to deconstruct harmful stereotypes. Excuse me. Partnerships matter, and I would like to share that the study would not have been possible without the expertise and support provided by UNICEF's partners, including the advisory board members from UN Women, Population First, the Center for Women's Development Studies, and the Jamia Millia Islamia University. UNICEF and others have been working on addressing the impacts of marketing on gender socialization and the desire for gender equity for quite some time now. For example, our work with LEGO and the Unstereotype Alliance. So I would like to end by reiterating our confidence that this study will be a big step towards industry platforms championing more gender-sensitive advertising. This will be an important way of stopping the perpetuation of harmful stereotypes, and instead of that, creating opportunities for the promotion of women's and girls' empowerment. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Yasmin. Again, we're just so thrilled to be partnered with UNICEF. So now, without further ado, we have a lot to unpack in a very short amount of time. I'm going to ask all of our esteemed panelists to turn their camera on, and I will introduce them. With us today is Megha Tata, who has multiple roles, but president of IAA India chapter and the managing director of South Asia for Discovery. So welcome, Megha. Next, I would love to welcome Piyush Pandey, the Chief Creative Officer Worldwide and Executive Chairman, India for Ogilvy. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And next, I would like to welcome Sepno Chadha, Senior Country Director, Google India and Southeast Asia. And last but not least, I would love to welcome Rohini Migliani, who is the Vice President of International Communications for Procter & Gamble for Asia, the Middle East, Africa, and India. So given this short amount of time that we have today, I'm only going to be able to ask our esteemed colleagues probably 2 rounds of questions. And, you know, all of these esteemed colleagues and their companies have been doing the work and really digging in personally and also professionally in their jobs. So, Megha, I'm going to start with you. And first, I'm going to ask you to address a question from your IAA hat. You know, why was it so important to the IAA to partner with us and conduct this research? And were there any findings that really jumped out at you that were surprising?
Thank you, Madeline, and thank you for this opportunity. Good evening, good morning, everybody who have joined us from all around the world. It's an absolute honor to be part of this discussion, and more importantly, to be part of this study and research initiative with GDI and UNICEF. You know, IAA has always been at the forefront of addressing some of the gender diversity issues in our country. We've conducted multiple, initiatives discussing and addressing them in whatever we can. But this particular partnership is very true and very new to us, and something we're very excited about. When UNICEF approached us and when we realized that this is a fantastic opportunity with a reputed institute like GDI, this just made absolute sense, because we are a very robust industry body, one of the few bodies in the industry who actually have representation not only from advertising but marketers and media all in one. So we are all encompassing, very inclusive organization, which has always felt the need to address the diversity and inclusion agenda, especially when it comes to gender representation. And so it is an absolute honor to be part of this initiative. And I'm really excited about the way we partnered so beautifully with GDI and UNICEF. We had some wonderful partners in India who supported us in when we provided those 1,000 ads to GDI, companies like Bark, TAM, and even a company called, Clutter Cutters, who supported us in creating, a platform for us to provide this research. And I think for me, really, Madeline, what's important that this is, like Yasmin said, it is, we can change the narrative. We are an industry which can make the difference, because at the end of the day, content really creates that narrative which represents the society. Now you can say whether the content follows the society or society follows the content, and that's a debate which is ongoing. But I think as an industry body and a responsible industry body, we feel very strongly about how we can make a difference along with the players in the industry, whether it's the advertisers, advertising agencies, marketers, media. All of us have to play a role to make that difference. And I wasn't, let's say I was a 50-50 with the findings which came about. It was good to see some bit which is looking good, but like Yasmin also said, there's a long way to go. We have to do a lot more to take that percentages far more in a situation into a of the way the weightage of our representation in the advertising is far better. And it's not only gender, I would say. I think it's also with different other biases which exist in our society, which we don't give enough of credit or enough focus on, whether it is, like you said, the body size, color, sexual orientation. There is so much more we can do as a society, but and I do believe that this particular initiative is absolutely the first step, maybe in the right direction, to address some of those huge issues which exist in our country.
Thank you so much, Megha. I'm going to turn next to Piyush Pandey, and I hope you don't mind, sir. I'm going to quote you, and it's really about the power of media for social good. But you said, look at India. It's not a country, it's a continent, and it is so multicultural that if we do not learn to have some humility, we will not exist. If I have to live in today's world, and if I have to communicate in it, I have to respect other cultures, and that people in advertising can use their creativity to drive social change. And I think as an executive and as an esteemed person, you've lived your whole life truthfully in terms of advocating for social good. And I was wondering if you could talk about that in terms of the power of advertising for social good.
Thank you. First of all, let me congratulate GDI and IAA for going through with this research, because every information helps people. If there was a research conducted 10 years back of a similar kind, and I had the opportunity of seeing both numbers, I would be a happy man that we've come a long way. We've come a long way from where we were. And yes, I completely agree that there's a long way to go. As communicators, we have a big thing. Lots of people say that advertising is a reflection of society. I don't think so. I think good advertising goes under the skin and sees problems which people don't talk about openly in researches. If we are able to get to the bottom of the problem, which exists, it exists. Somebody has to motivate it. Somebody has to bring it forward. And if you look at the kind of work that's been done by Tata Tea, Jagore campaign, or for that matter, Share the Load by P&G, and lots of work done on Red Label by Unilever, lots of work done by Titan about women executives, about women having a place. When we talk about numbers, we see numbers of women shown in working conditions. I would love to go into it that, yes, women are shown cooking and women are shown, those numbers are a bit a part of our culture. But if I was to analyze that research and say, how were they depicted? Were they actually making a difference to society? I'll give you an example of Red Label tea, where a woman is pushing her husband to break a religious taboo, where a woman is pushing the family to go and serve food to a COVID patient living next door. So it's the overall personality of a woman that you have to respect. You have to find the most non-obvious ways of saying a woman matters. A woman makes a difference. A woman leads power. When I saw those numbers on banking and finance, I was, those numbers are true. And it's sad that a whole lot of our chief bankers in our country and finance people are women. I don't know where people have missed the point. So, yes, number of things we are, and I also believe that if there are 10 people making this kind of work and actually becoming popular in the marketplace, it will rub off. It will rub off on the others. It will make those 10 into 20 and the 20 into 40 in the time ahead of us, because they're popular. People will see as to what are they doing, which is different from what I'm doing. And you'll find that, yes, the woman is changing. The other part which is disturbing, which is about color. Now, again, we have to be a little smart in looking at those numbers. There is a history to this country. There is a cultural diversity of this country. There is a bias of this country. Let me be very honest with this. There is a bias of this country, and it has to slowly change. It has to slowly change. It will not change by governing bodies. I promise you that. It will change by changing mindsets. And mindsets are changed by successes. So if you have a 14-year-old boxer in a Bonvita ad, which is a girl, you were used to seeing boys till then, and it makes an impact. People start saying, why couldn't I do it like this? If a steel company like JSW could portray a woman wrestler as one of the sporting leaders of this country. So I think the change is coming. Change will come. The color change scenario largely on cosmetic brands. Again, somebody will have to take the step. I have personally taken steps in the past. They were attempted by my partners who are my clients, but not given the full thrust because the belief was not 100%. It will come. I think the more we show, the more no governing bodies will be able to do it. I promise you that. They will look at the important things of nudity, about obesity, but there will be a lot of gray areas. Gray areas can only be changed by demonstration of successful messaging, by demonstration of depicting a woman in the right way as they deserve to be. And I think studies like this, when shared, will open some minds. Will open some minds. We are on a good wicket, as they say in my country, because we are a cricket playing nation. We are on a good wicket. We have to bat well together. And I think with partners like IAA and some prominent agencies, I think the number of agencies doing good work today. The more that work gets successful, I think the next time we do this research, we will all be very happy to see some better numbers. Some numbers will take a little longer. And today we are in a good position because one of the issues that the Prime Minister of the country is saying is educate girls, girls will make you grow. So we have the environment, we have the will, we need to demonstrate.
Thank
Dove's
you.
doing such a fantastic job in the area of beauty products. Why can't others do it? I think it will come. Dove is successful. It will filter down to other people. So let's keep at it. Let's not lose heart. We fight. We fight. The change will come. And thank you for this research. It will open some minds for sure.
Thank you so much. So building on what Piyush said about its actions, not words, I'm going to turn to Setno Charda at Google. And, we've had the privilege of being partners with Google since about 2010. And when we think about demonstrating actions, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the 5 inclusive principles that you have recommended as a guide for, marketing strategies. And if you could just unpack that for all of us.
Thank you for that. And thanks for the invitation, and congratulations to the IAA and UNICEF and to the Institute. We've had the privilege of working with the Institute using machine learning to actually understand what's happening with advertising over time and being able to drive through analysis to make our eyes open to what's happening. And I think the research here that you've presented today is another one of these times where our eyes get opened. The question is now, how do we move from inclusive marketing from something that's nice to have for brands to something that brands must do? And at Google, we are constantly getting the question, since we are a platform and YouTube is a platform, that how can we make marketing more inclusive? So we have these 5 principles, and I'll go fast, but I'll try and unpack them as well. The first is principle 1, your business is your brand. I think sometimes we think that communication and communicating values is the most important thing, but actually the key thing is to incorporate them into our business. Like marketing allows us to showcase our values, but it needs to be evident throughout the entire business. And so what we need to do is across the entire value chain, research, production, design, how we're building our products, we need to remember that our business is our brand. So it's not just our communication that needs to be inclusive. We need to look at our work across the spectrum. It's not just the last mile, it's the core DNA. So you need to foster psychological safety so that everyone in your design teams, product teams speaks freely and can ask tough questions around inclusion. So that's the first principle. The second principle is, and I think we've heard from, the legendary Piyush Pandey and, around, diverse stories and some of the great work that brands have done. We need to inspire with familiar, beyond familiar stories, and we need to challenge ourselves. We need to challenge our teams to actually hero different groups. We sometimes over showcase the typical target market that we're going after. We need to intentionally include in the marketing that we're creating. If we don't intentionally include, we will unintentionally exclude. And so we need to look across the body of work and make sure that we're making it representative, but that we're also inspiring with diverse stories. Which brings me to the third principle, which is that you need to, and as Google, we really believe in authentic, relatable storytelling, which is the third principle. Overly engineering diverse scenarios can look artificial and insincere. So we need to tell real stories as much as possible. Real people, real stories, championing what they're saying, understanding their context. It's probably less important for us to fictionalize. We need to look at real user insights. So authenticity and relatability are key. The fourth principle is to challenge the stereotypes. We need, missed opportunities exist when we don't challenge preconceived bias. So we need to pursue positive portrayals of people that directly challenge the common preconceptions and stereotypes. And I think some of the examples that Mr. Pandey shared do that exceptionally well. And we've seen some really great work in the Indian market, and we have made progress here. And the last principle is understanding your brand's role. This is beyond a PR opportunity. We can't look at it like that. The end goal of inclusive marketing is not PR. Our jobs as marketers are to understand that and to connect to our customers. We need to be credible in this space. It's a fundamental commitment. And so it's not about us, it's not about our brand, it's around the end outcomes that we will achieve. This isn't about us, this is about the end outcomes. And so inclusive marketing cannot be about PR for our own brands. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And building on what you said about, inspiring diverse stories, I'm going to turn to Rohini Miliani. And, in February at the We See Equal Summit, P&G announced their commitment to achieve equal representation of female directors behind the camera. And what the Institute has found when we looked at the global film market, that if there were female, directors and writers, it yielded anywhere from a 6.8 to 7.5% increase in on-screen roles. So I would love if you could talk to us a little bit since February, what's been happening with that commitment, and what are the steps that P&G has taken toward achieving that type of gender equality behind the camera?
Sure, thank you. And, I want to first start by, thanking the IAA and the Gina Davis Foundation and UNICEF, for this amazing study and shining a spotlight on this. And it's an area that, P&G fervently believes in, and that we are working behind the scenes, engaging our entire marketing organization and our partners to achieving this goal. And I guess our journey started with, realizing that, ads really impact how people perceive their world. When they see something in advertising, it appears normal to them. Advertising can either subtly or directly influence people's attitudes. And P&G is one of the largest advertisers in the world, if not the largest. And so it began with us deciding to consciously, intentionally commit to challenging gender stereotypes and aiming for gender equality, both on the camera, but also, and this is kind of defining for us, behind the camera. And we started with this because a lot of our brands tend to be bought by a female target. And so therefore, our portrayal of these women whom we serve, we want that to be authentic and not stereotypical, but real. But what we also found is that we achieve that authentic portrayal when the people who are creating those images and stories are empathetic towards these women. And the corollary to that is that the more women who are writing these stories, directing these stories, shooting these stories are involved, our portrayal on screen becomes more empathetic and more real and more relatable by our audience. So it was with that realization that P&G took a pledge as part of our Gender Equality Summit, We See Equal, to mandatorily include at least one female director on any triple bid commercial project across our brands. And the system is already in place. And our goal is to achieve this as an initial step for 100% of our upcoming projects over the next 6 months. And we believe this is an important stepping stone to get to our end goal, which is to achieve equal representation behind the camera, focusing first on directors who play the biggest role in crafting the story. What we find actually is that we need to not only find women directors, but we also need to mentor them and work with newer talent and create equal opportunities for projects. In some cases, build their capability and share resources so that over the next 3 years, 50% of our advertising production in P&G India is directed by women. We sort of realized that there is a cycle, and we want to break that cycle. The cycle that appears to plague the industry is that the opportunity to work on big projects requires experience. Otherwise, you wouldn't get selected. Your showreel doesn't measure up. But in order to create that amazing showreel, you need to have had those opportunities to work on projects and thus develop the showreel. So we want to proactively help break that cycle and mentor, support women directors early in their careers, so that eventually they can build up those showreels. They do have a credible repertoire. So it sort of, resonates with, the previous speaker who talked about the need to intentionally include, otherwise people get unintentionally excluded. So our intent with directors is to intentionally include, but also to help support, mentor, so that they build their capability. So that's, really what we're trying to do, Madeline.
Thank you so much. So I think the key to what you were saying that I want to build on for our second round, we're going to go quickly into our second round, is commitment and intent. And so, Megha, I'm going to turn over to you. Now your other hat, as Managing Director of Discovery Inc. for South Asia, you have committed to an approach on diversity, equity, inclusion, programming, and also behind the camera. Can you talk a little bit about what the impact of this has been for Discovery, any case histories, any examples that you want to share with our audience?
Sure, Madeline, thank you. I want to just compliment Rohini for that pledge P&G has taken. That's like salute to you and the company. I think it's like we've been saying, action speaks more than words. And I think that's fabulous. and to see more and more that action being taken by organizations will actually reflect in changing the narrative in front of the camera as well as the back of the camera. So this is wonderful. I think from a discovery point of view, Madeline, it's one of the diversity and inclusion is a very integral part of our organization. We are truly a global organization, available in 220 plus countries, 50 languages, multiple cultures, and all of that is encompassed in the kind of the content we create, but not just from what we're doing in front of the camera, but also for our employees. Some of the initiatives which we take as an organization, which flows right from the global leadership downwards, is really fantastic. I've worked in the industry for 30 plus years, and it's one of the few companies I really can very proudly say that they really take the diversity and inclusion agenda very seriously. It's not a box which they need to tick for the sake of making a PR statement, but they actually do what they mean. And whether it's initiatives like we have a mandatory unconscious bias training for everybody in the organization. We have 10,000 employees around the world, and we are all mandated to take an unconscious bias training. And because we all do know that biases do exist in our lives, and that is how we are. We've been brought up with biases. And this is really not about the time, why do biases exist? It is, the fact is to acknowledge that they do exist. The question is, what are you going to do about it? And how do you make that change? And so that commitment we're bringing around in the employees, that how can you make that change, even if it's one or two things which you can identify that, okay, this is the bias I have, and I'm going to make this effort in making that difference. And that's something, it's an ongoing process we're doing across the board, across our employee base. Or even initiative like AbleD, wherein we are giving a platform for people with disabilities, physical disabilities, mental disabilities, and how do you sort of make them feel part of the company and organize, bring in an inclusiveness into that, into the work culture, is something which very few organizations, I think, can do that, and this is something we're very proud of. Or initiatives like Talent Unlimited, wherein we are bringing up, giving opportunities for internship and mentorship for children or young professionals from underprivileged backgrounds. Now, these are all things, and there are multiple more such initiatives we do, and it's not only gender skewed. It cuts across various other biases which exist, or various other diversity aspects which exist in our society, and how we as an organization are driving that is something very, very integral part of our organization. And I do hope that more and more organizations sort of work in that space, and I know they do. I know P&G does, and a lot of other organizations who do it. But it's really about I just want to sort of end by saying that this particular study opens up a whole lot of opportunities to address. You can take a glass half full approach to it. It is, of course, there are things which are not, things have moved better, but can they be better? Absolutely. Yes. And how can we as an industry body can play a role? I think like Piyush said, lots of examples of things have done well. In fact, I do want to refer to one ad which I saw. It was beautiful commercial of a brand. It's a jewelry brand called Bhima. I don't know how many of you've seen that, but it was about a journey, a transition journey of a transgender. And to have a transgender move from one gender to the other, and how the parents are all encompassing, and it's okay to be the way you are, and you are beautiful and pure just as love. I think that was beautiful. So there are a few examples like that, and many more, I'm sure, but there's so much more yet to be done. And I do believe that we at IAA are definitely committed to driving that conversation forward amongst all the stalwarts which are in this panel today, and the industry at large, to make that difference in our society.
Thank you so much. Piyush, I'm going to turn back over to you, because you have been a disruptor and a change maker, and clearly have, influenced not only these amazing and legendary campaigns, but, with Ogilvy, I know, you mentioned about, changing the ecosystem. And one of the commitments that I read about with Ogilvy, with your leadership, is the expansion of its creative council and also other diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives that you've been leading. So I was wondering if you could talk about what Ogilvy has been doing and some of these programs that you have put in place in the company that have been successful, and any case histories or examples you want to share with our audience.
Let me start by making a confession that from the quote that you are in possession of, that we said that we'll make the Creative Council 50%. We haven't reached there as yet for various reasons. But we also realize that if you grow more women right from the time of hiring into the system, you will find women finding the top slots. I think one of the big things that's happened, and I don't say that it's my doing, it's the CEO's decision based on competence, based on ability, and based on gender. And that's our worldwide CFO is a lady today, heading North America, which is the largest of our operations, is Devika Bulchandani. She's there. So I think the belief is there. Every slot is not complete till now, but we are all committed, right from WPP, which is our holding company, to Ogilvy Worldwide, to Ogilvy India, which I can talk more in detail of, that there are 5 different programs running right now about women leadership, of hiring women, of giving protection to women against harassment, and led by women leaders. Our head of global businesses out of India is leading the charge in growing women. So the commitment is there. There is a lot more to do, without doubt. Certain slots have to be filled. 50% is a number which is a challenge. We'll get there. We are around 25 now, but we'll get there. So the more you believe, the more you do, the more will happen. And that is where Mark Reed's commitment from WPP is. That's where the commitment of Andy Main from Ogilvy is. That's my commitment to India. And if you respect women at home, I'm a 8th child after 7 women, all more successful than I am. I've lived with respecting women. And if I don't push the agenda, who will? And there are lots of people today who are doing that. Give them the opportunity and they prove very, very quickly that they're better than you. I've seen it happen. So everything is it's like when you create a new scenario, start growing it from the roots, growing it at every level. And you'll find that suddenly you have transformed. You've transformed into a better organization, into a better leader yourself. I think that's the route to take, and that's the route to follow, and that's the route for others to see. When you see successful women doing these kind of jobs, you will motivate not only your organization, you will motivate the industry. So that's the agenda for all of us, and that's the agenda that we are committed to. And one more thing that we are committed to is no woman will ever feel that you are filling a number, you are filling a quota, you are trying to prove a point. They have self-respect, and we will never, ever disturb it.
Thank you so much. I want to build on what you were saying about transformation. I'm going to turn back over to Sapna. clearly there's the internal manifestation of Google and the programs that you're doing, but then, you and YouTube are helping your advertisers to recognize how to use an intersectional lens when creating content for the platform. Can you talk a little bit about how you're helping to transform your clients, the advertisers, the creators on your platform? And if you could talk about any impact of these inclusion marketing initiatives, any case histories from some of your clients or creators that you want to share with us.
Yeah, no, sure. And, we've had the privilege of working with the Institute over time. I think the biggest thing that drives change is data, right? And being able to show by category, by brands, how our clients and advertisers are doing in terms of representation, screen time, speaking time. Like, these are things that will drive change, right? And I think so the data usually is the thing that drives the most aha moments. So that's where we're spending quite a bit of time. We also do believe, just like, I think Megha and Rohini has spoke about, actions speak louder than words, right? India has one of the most, has had one of the most unequal internets. There's been a huge gender divide on the internet, and that's been a place where we've spent quite a bit of time over the last 5 years. I think we didn't feel we had the right to actually push on gender until we saw progress ourselves. How do we push our clients, our advertisers to do more here when there's an unequal internet? And so over the last 5 years, we've committed to getting more of a balance on the internet. We have a program called Internet Sati, where we've been able to drive change in the ecosystem. We've moved from 1 in every 10 internet users being a woman to now that being almost 4 in 10, right? So that's huge progress that we've had and that we've been able to make a difference. I think the coming back to, now that we've done this and there is a gender equality, how do we hold that accountability across the board? And how do we continue to highlight great work that's doing the same thing in terms of pushing the agenda, in terms of making people think? And that's where I think whether it's celebrating great work, we have a leaderboard and that highlights great work that our advertisers are doing. And we show the impact of this. Ultimately, when you do inclusive marketing, it drives results, right? I think this isn't, again, it's not PR, it's not CSR. And so being able to celebrate and to reward, to show the difference, like, that's the place where we're spending quite a bit of time to be able to measure the impact of the work that we're doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I want to build on what you were saying about accountability, and measurement. And I'm going to turn back to Rohini, and then I'm going to bring on our first question. Clearly with, Share the Load, to me, among some of the best campaigns that's had a lot of impact, and clearly we've talked about the power of voice for good, and that consumers are expecting more from brands. And can you talk a little bit about the results from that campaign? Because I know from the time it launched, even now, P&G has been measuring the impact of that campaign. And I was wondering if there's any numbers or any case history that you can share as a result, of the impact, not only of the campaign, but how you're changing minds of the consumer.
Sure. So yes, and I guess, again, in this case, our consistent and steady commitment to the Share the Load campaign, which we launched in 2014, and it is continuing till today for 7 years. I think that stems from a belief that we have that being a force for good is not something that, can change from year to year. The consumer, as you said, is expecting a lot from us. And one of the most important things they're expecting from brands is authenticity, that they can believe what we're saying and that we mean what we say. And one of the ways in which to convey that is simply to be consistent. And, if we're switching from one trendy cause topic to another trendy cause topic from year to year, we will lose the authenticity of what we're trying to say. And that's kind of one of the main reasons why we stuck to the Share the Load campaign, and we have revisited it every year, and we've refreshed it every year. And the other aspect here is that what we're finding is that the philosophy of a force for good is also a force for growth. What we're finding is that focusing on purpose-led advertising is not just the right thing to do for the society at large, but it's also the right business choice. And that's kind of been another reason why we have sort of continued to be extremely consistent with this campaign. And as a result of this consistency over 6 or 7 years, what we have found is that when we started the campaign in 2014, 80% of men believed that laundry was only a woman's job. And when we measured this number in 2020, we find that the number is down to 41%. And this is tremendously encouraging to us, and this is what keeps us going. And we have extended this breaking of gender stereotypes in our detergent advertising, even in our product advertising. We consistently choose to have male ambassadors. When we show female roles in our advertising, we show them in a position of leadership. One of the ads that we are running right now on Ariel shows a woman who is the head chef in a high-end restaurant, just as an example. Through this approach, really what we're trying to consistently do is to normalize the imagery of men doing laundry. This speaks to, one of your findings that, men are not portrayed consistently as being involved in domestic duties. So, we do intend to consistently, authentically stick to Share the Load and consistently change this gender stereotype. There are a couple of other campaigns that we have been running, which have launched, respectively 3 years ago and 2 years ago, that I'll touch on briefly. One of them, which have also sort of tried to shatter gender stereotypes. One is, interestingly, Gillette. The Gillette tagline is "the best a man can get." But strangely enough, the whole country took notice when a year and a half ago, we twisted that gender stereotype and we showed how 2 young girls in a small town in North India took over their father's barbershop and made it a success and refused to get torn down by stereotypes. And importantly, that the men of the village supported them and did not boycott that barbershop. So that's another way in which P&G is going after gender stereotypes. And then a third one that we have sort of gone after is with a different brand entirely, which is Vicks, where now for 2 years running, we have portrayed unusual forms of parenting, challenging forms of parenting. The first one was a transgender woman, epitomizing the highest standards of motherhood and care in adopting a daughter. And then there has been a follow-up to this campaign as well in the following year. So I guess from a P&G standpoint, we are going after gender stereotypes, both in front of the camera as well as behind the camera. And we are attempting to do this through long-running campaigns that demonstrate our authenticity and our consistency. And in so doing, we are carefully measuring how these efforts are actually changing attitudes among the people whom we serve in India.
Those are just so impressive. And, Gina always talked about, what happens on screen can play out, in real life. And that, something as simple as a change in media messaging can really change minds. So we're only going to have time for one question, and I want to bring on our guest, Nina Davaluri, who's going to ask the first question of the panel. And for any of you who have questions that haven't been answered, if you give us your email in the chat, we'll follow up with our panelists. So Nina is an acclaimed activist, filmmaker, actor, and entrepreneur. She gained international recognition by becoming the first Indian American and South Asian to become Miss America in 2014. And most recently, she has produced a new documentary called Complexion. Nina, welcome, and we will throw it to you to ask the first question.
Thank you so much, Madeline, and to all the panelists for being here. It was just such a wonderful, insightful, delightful conversation to be a part of. A couple things that really hit me just being in this space, I suppose, was something that I experienced specifically. My family is from South India. I grew up kind of between coming back to India every year and also, born in the US. So I kind of was towing two different cultures in my upbringing. And even now, I think assimilation is a never ending process. And so, one of the things obviously colorism was something that I was exposed to at an incredibly young age. It's very normalized in India. The comments you hear are just accepted. And so one of the things that, as I went into the documentary space, I remember as I was filming in India, I saw a mother who had clearly been working in the fields all day as she was dressed in her sari. And she had her young daughter with her, who was probably 7 years old. And I remember them walking up to one of the side street stands in Vijayawada, which is where my family is originally from. And she buys a packet of Fair and Lovely for, I think, maybe 5 rupees. And she hands it to her daughter. And she says to her in Telugu, "So you don't have the life that I have." And I think that was a moment that really hit me in the sense of how the power of advertising and how it truly infiltrates every aspect of society. And something that I heard today that I thought was really interesting is this idea of unintentional exclusion. And I would like to challenge that a little, because I think in terms of colorism, darker skin tones have been intentionally excluded from advertising, marketing, media. And one of the things that I've said over this past year is that essentially it is the responsibility, and so much of the work that all of you are doing, which I'm incredibly grateful for, of media companies, also I think when we talk about media, we have to include Bollywood, the industry of how this is portrayed and how they have also built this hierarchical structure that white is the only form of success or elitism, and how that also translates to socioeconomically. One of my questions to you, getting to that point, is I'm curious, and I'm sure that you have all seen some way, shape, or form of colorism manifesting, and I think this is something that exists between males and females in every, like I said, in every way. But Mr. Pandey, you had mentioned that you had been able to try and work on advertising that was targeting this issue on colorism. And you said the belief was not necessarily 100%. So my question to all of you, but Mr. Pandey, if you would like to kick it off, I'm curious to know why that belief was not 100%, or what the conversation looked like, essentially keeping in mind, of course, advertising is, for businesses to essentially sell their products, and there is a bottom line that has to be made. And I think we're all very aware of that. But what do you think was that keeping that 100% or belief?
Yeah.
Want to have the darker skin tones, and potentially what would you do differently now, being in the position you're in, and having the the voice that you have in order to create that change?
Okay. All right. I think what always happens is disruption needs a lot of courage. And why got made up to a certain point and not beyond was somebody has to stick his neck out. When you want to bring a change, somebody has to stick his neck out. And everyone will go with the status quo. And the ones who change the status quo are the ones that change the scenario. I think the market or the people concerned were not ready to put their necks on the line along with mine, because I always said, yes, I'm ready to put my neck on the line, but yours has to be next to mine because you're spending the money. So I think we'll have to keep trying. These are social traits, as you rightly mentioned about movies, the way it has been. And unless somebody breaks the scenario, and I think the coming of all the OTT platforms is bringing about that change. And I think a few successes will bring actors into the scenario to have that opportunity. But yes, you're absolutely right. And also, let's go back to your own experience that you had in South India. It's so embedded in our culture. Look at the matrimonial columns, even to date, that we have to keep fighting it. Sorry, I'm digressing, but I had an opportunity of working with UNICEF and the Ministry of Health on eradicating polio. For 11 years, we were working, and the governments and UNICEF were working for even longer years. And the health workers were working on the ground. My experience was it took 11 years, and when in 2014, India was declared polio-free, God, it gave you courage that it won't happen tomorrow. But if you don't demonstrate, it will never happen. So you're absolutely right. We'll have to keep fighting it. We'll have to keep putting it. But it's changing, Nina. Let me assure you of that. If you look at the ads of 10 years back and those of today, you will find a difference. You will not find 100% difference, but you will find an encouraging difference that, yes, it can be fought, yet it can be changed. So we are at it. And I'm sure there are many more younger people who are working in the industry. They also believe the same. A change will come.
Thank you for sharing that.
So I don't know if any of our other panelists want to answer. I know you're all staying up very, very late. So I'll, if anyone wants to jump in, or I will just thank everyone, and we will close the session. So I don't know if any of our other panelists want to respond to Nina, or we can let you all go back.
I think I'll just say this. Nina just struck a chord with me when it comes to the color representation in our communication world, whether it's Bollywood, television, advertising. It's been many years of ingrained, in our society, that how color can be different, and fair skin versus dark skin. And, that's a different debate and another panel discussion just dedicated to that possibly. But I think, like Piyush said, things are changing. There's a positive sign. So we all live in hope, and that's what we're hoping, that it only will get better. But I do believe for one PNG, there are 10, I don't want to name brands, who are doing what they should not be doing. So the balance is where the problem is. It is not about it's not about the brands which are doing great work, like there's Titan, there's PNG, there's, a whole lot of other brands who are really taking the right step forward. Born Vita, like Piyush said. But there are so many more who are still objectifying women, who are still showing fair skin works better than dark skin, who are still showing women cooking and men watching TV, who are still showing young boys being fighter pilots and a girl child trying to play with dolls. That still does exist. The question, I guess, to this Trope and the industry at large, is that we need to shift that balance. We need to make it more sort of balanced approach of representation. And I think all of us have to do our bit. It's an ongoing fight, as they say, and something we need to continue doing our bit. And I think at IA, I know we are very committed to driving this dialogue with different bodies across, whether it's individuals or advertising agencies or marketers or industry bodies, to make this, try to make this difference. So, and it's not IA India, it's IA Global as well, very, very, strongly believes in the diversity and inclusion agenda. And I think I have my colleagues from IA Global who are part of this panel listening in, and I know they feel very strongly about it. So we do hope that we all can make a collective difference in the coming months and years.
And I'd also like to add that I personally have a huge amount of hope and optimism for the younger marketers who are coming up in all of these different companies, because the reality is there are thousands of ads being made in the country every day, and the decision about which actress are we going to cast. All right, if you have that decision is being taken in those small meeting rooms, right, by those young marketers. And so the only way over time that we are really going to make a sea change here is if those younger marketers are encouraged and have the same sort of viewpoint that we're talking about here, so that when they're in that room alone with the director, they make that courageous decision that Piyush talked about. Say, okay, both these women are great actors. I'm going to go with the woman with the darker skin because I want to intentionally include. I'm going to make the woman the head chef, not the man. Those decisions take place in those small encounters. And unless we as leaders of this industry can penetrate that far and influence that far, we're not going to get anywhere. So the future really lies in the hands of the future marketers and the current young marketers. And the more we can influence them, the more successful we will be.
Yeah, and I absolutely agree. I think one is what's happening in that room, which we can control as leaders. And I think asking these tough questions, just like as you've asked, is what we need to do. But actually calling each other out as brands by looking at data, right? I think that's where, because otherwise these seem one-off, but until we can actually see that these big questions, like, are we being representative? Do we want to follow the rest of the world, or can India get ahead, right? Because colorism is a problem in India, but it's a problem around the world. It's a question as a marketing, fraternity, we need to ask ourselves is, do we want to be behind on this, or do we want to get ahead? And how can we be even more provocative? I think, what we say is we have to build even for for minorities. When you build for minorities, even if you think about disability, for example, you end up actually building for everyone, right? And that's what inclusion is, right? If you just think about pleasing various groups, that's not the way to go about this, right? It's really around representing everyone. And so that's to that point of intentional inclusion, like we have to be super intentional, and then we'll end up actually building for everyone.
Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you, Nina, for such an insightful question. I want to thank Megha Tata, Piyush Pandey, Sapna Chadha, and Rohini Migliani. Thank you so much. Thank you to UNICEF. Thank you to the IAA. And for all of you, the report will be on our website, cjane.org. And if we didn't get to your questions, if you give us your email, we will follow up with our panelists. So again, thank you so much to everyone. Have a great evening, have a great morning, have a great afternoon, and we'll see you again. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.